Guys, please support the podcast. In the description and in the pinned comment is the PayPal, the Cash App, the Buy Me a Coffee, the Locals, the Patreon, all ways to support the show. The show needs $5,000 a month. I'd rather get $1 from 5,000 people than $5,000 from YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble, which is what it's currently doing because those are weak spots and they have in the past completely stopped paying me and outright censored me. If you want something in return, Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, link in the description, 10% off. Sport Drink, link in the description, 10% off. And if you can't do any of that, please go to ARC, the Association for the Recovery of Children. Special Forces veterans since 1993 have been rescuing sex-trafficked children once a month, 12 times a year since 1993, 100% success rate. And if you can't donate to that, there's a new website up from a fan of the show where you can donate frequent flyer miles to them, which reduces overhead costs, which allows them to do more operations. Thank you. We are recording on Sunday, April 19th, 2026 at 10:01 a.m. Eastern Time. And happy birthday to the not present Colonel Watkins and the is present Colonel Murray, Colonel EM, and seven-star General Blaine Holt, who is, as we've discussed before, pulls all the strings. He's on the diving board above the high table. No one knows about him. He's the shadow of the echo of the dream you forgot. He is the dark hand. Why he comes on my podcast, I don't know. Perhaps he's using me in some sort of satanic ritual. So with that, General, because you have the least amount of time here, you kick it off. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Thanks for the promotion. And if you'll just look out the window, you'll see a black Suburban. They're just
Ah,
friendlies.
they're on time. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're on time.
they're just
Yeah, they're
walking.
waving. Yeah, they're waving.
If
Yeah,
you could bring them coffee after we're done, that'd be really
yeah, I
appreciated.
can see the snipers. Yeah, no, I know. I won't mention it. Yeah,
Lace it with laxatives, though.
yeah.
Yeah. Hey, listen, overnight, the president decided to get pretty interesting on his social media, and he's dropping all kinds of little hints and crumbs and tidbits in what I think is his own personal little psyop campaign. I just don't know why he's doing it. I'm trying to figure that one out. And just in case people haven't been perusing his social, he's putting out things like, well, it's time to wrap up the guilty. It's time to hold them accountable. I'm the lion. They're jackals. Here it comes. And then he put out a "the best is yet to come" post, and then he scheduled a Bible reading on Tuesday that he's going to read out of Chronicles. And this is interesting to me because if this is true, he's reading the passage in Chronicles where he's talking about Solomon's building the temple and having it sanctified from God. That is extremely interesting to me because for contemporary times, we get into these folks who are insistent that building the third temple will make us all very happy and pleased. Little problem with that Al-Aqsa Mosque standing in the way. And then we look at all that with the Israeli insistence that the U.S. strategy is nonsense and going ahead and turning southern Lebanon into Gaza is in their best interest. And then we have the mysterious ships yesterday that got hit with fire, and we're all supposed to believe that the Iranians still have some fight in them and they went and popped those ships. I'm not sure that that's exactly the case. And then there's this idea that we're negotiating with these guys in Islamabad, but apparently there's somebody else whose name and identity are hidden in Iran that we're really negotiating with. And so what we have here is a hot mess of stuff and new puzzle pieces in the box to unpick. So I thought I'd take the puzzle pieces, throw them into the Tommy's podcast room, and let us sit and twist them around and wonder at them.
And we don't have the puzzle master with us, Colonel Watkins, so we're hopelessly outgunned.
Yeah, on the thumbnail to this, can you still put her on the thumbnail to the videos? And maybe give her a birthday hat or something like that with a noisemaker.
As soon as he said, "Can you put her in the thumbnail?" My first thought was, "I'm gonna put a little fucking
Yeah, that's exactly it.
a little cone hat on her." Yeah,
Please
all
do
right,
that.
all right, all right,
She has it coming.
all right. Fair enough.
Do
Yeah.
you guys remember the movie, the director's cut of The Last Kingdom, when Balian is handing over Jerusalem to Salahuddin? And I don't remember the exact dialogue, but there's a point there where, you know, Balian states that he'll tear the city down before, I don't remember what it is exactly, but I think personally the world would be a much more peaceful place if we just nuked Jerusalem.
I've been campaigning for Trump to do something like that for a while now, just as a
Just
kind of fun. Yeah,
I mean,
Okay.
I'm not
Maybe,
openly
maybe.
calling for that, by the way,
Yeah.
but
This is for entertainment purposes only, and I do
yeah,
not have nuking Jerusalem on my bingo card, just so
yeah.
everybody understands that.
fair
Hey,
enough.
how many Suburbans are outside your window now?
Oh yeah,
There's more.
yeah.
So, um, much of what Trump puts out is theater, of course, right? To throw off, it's noise to throw off the algorithms and the LLMs that, our own enemies, internal and foreign, are using against us or trying to use against us. Um, I personally think that the whole third temple, whatever, all that stuff's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. It's designed to incense, the Abrahamic belief peoples, of which there's what, 2 billion or something, all told between Christians, Jews, and Muslims.
Hmm.
Um,
Gets people going to action, though. That's the
oh,
important part.
well, it gets certain people to go, but most of those people haven't really mattered for a long time. The question becomes one of how is it impacting the markets? How are the markets reacting?
Hmm.
And it's a weekend, right? So what is he doing? He's saying things that are setting up trades for next week.
True.
Somebody's going to make a fuck ton of money Monday morning,
And he knows who they are.
and he knows who they are. And then that money's going to be used to shore up some problem somewhere that, needs to not, so I've been watching this not terribly closely, but um, I have been watching these actions, and somebody's always making a trade. And then that capital is used to plug up some hole somewhere. It's brilliant because the enemy's been using this mechanism to fund their war against us.
That's exactly right. So let's examine the trade on Friday when you had everybody through President Trump saying, no, we've opened the Straits of Hormuz, everything is just hunky dory. And all of those oil longs got slammed. And we're talking about $1 billion. It was 720 million, just to be precise about it. But those long options were held by the financialists. They are probably very sore losers at this point.
Well, and they use that to manipulate price, right?
That's right.
So they use options to manipulate price in the markets. So yeah, yeah. When I look at more and more as I'm looking at what's coming out, 80% of what's coming out, 90% of what comes out of his account is setting up some trades. Because how else do you fund the war? How else do
Yeah,
you
no,
fund
I
the fight?
agree.
And make the enemy have to put real money on the table.
And well, and you've heard me say it even here is the leading warfighting general in this war is not Admiral Cooper, although he's a good man. It's actually Scott Bessent.
Yeah. Well, and it is also Jamie Dimon and others,
Oh, sure,
right?
sure.
Because Treasury,
They've already been loyalty checked.
correct. Yeah. Yeah. And then of course DNI, and she's coming out and saying, so when I look at the messaging, um, most of the stuff that comes out of Trump's mouth, I look at as market stuff. Now, although some of it's real signal, right? Geopolitical signal to ARC. But when I'm looking for actual signal, I'm looking at things in the courts here in the United States, and I'm looking at things out of DNI, right? Out of Tulsi Gabbard.
Like what?
Well, the one thing that interests me right now with what's coming out of the DNI is the Russiagate stuff, right? Now being called Obamagate. But the thing that interests me and also concerns me a bit is that Obama and Clinton were both Bush proteges. They're both Bush cutouts. And we're not hearing about the Bushes at all. And the Bushes are heavily involved in places like Hormuz and Indonesia, right? Malacca. So where there is oil and natural gas, the Bushes have been heavily involved in that for decades and decades and decades.
Deeply involved with the House of Saud. Yeah.
Right?
For decades.
Steve, your mic is a little quiet.
That's part of my counter deception program.
I know.
It's his way of making us focus and pay attention to him.
It is all about me. I am a colonel.
So I'm very interested in the signals coming out. And again, they're kind of transitioning from Russiagate to Obamagate because it's bigger, right? But Obama is straight up a Bush, asset, as were the Clintons. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a CIA creation, is what he is.
Yeah.
Well, through the Bushes, through HW.
Yeah,
right. And he's CIA creation through W.
Okay, so more importantly, stay on that.
More importantly, sir, stay with me. The thing to keep in mind here is that he was groomed from a very young age, so he has to go all in, right? Yes. And to me, this again, I go off narratives too. So the narrative I'm seeing is that it was all Obama, which is typical of Washington. Look over here, it's that guy, it's that guy, and the Bushes made a deal. I mean,
and here's
that's what it seems like.
It's that guy. That's one thing, right? It's that guy. That guy's a Democrat, so it's that Democrat, and then a third layer it's the black guy, and then maybe the fourth layer that's the black Muslim guy who's not even actually American and was an illegitimate president. So there's all these layers to point at Obama, which makes one wonder if he wasn't put there in the first place specifically to take the fall at some point.
Everybody in DC knew he was coming and knew what he was.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Okay. And in London, not just, right?
Everyone knew who he was and what he was.
Well, didn't Citigroup choose his cabinet?
Yeah. So is this why then you put Susie Wiles and Pam Bondi in for front row seats to be able to give them information to take back to the Bush camps? Because that's where they come from.
I don't know. I think Susie Wiles, yes, I think that was a total cock-up. I think Bondi was sent out because she's far more powerful. She was on the inside, so she had to sit in that seat in order to have the access that was required to information pools, right?
Yeah.
And individuals that she could directly talk to who would be able to tell her things that would never go into a document or an email right? Now she's far more powerful, a resource for Trump in the private sector, because now she is one of the most powerful when it comes to this, network, this high level network, et cetera. She is one of the most powerful defense attorneys in the country.
I don't know if I buy that after Todd Blanche coming out saying that it's not a crime to party with Epstein.
Well, I don't know.
That means that they've killed everything.
Todd is a serious problem. Todd is a serious issue.
Yeah.
And
that's my point.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's so obvious, though. He was the number 2, and now he's interim number 1. Todd has an interesting background. So he was a Southern District, New York prosecutor back in the early Epstein days. And then he goes off into private practice. He then goes into defending President Trump while they're conducting all the lawfare from him. Even his own law firm declared that what you're doing is unethical because of your previous relationships. So he split away from that law firm, set up his own camp, and the Trump camp paid him $10 million for all those lawsuits, lawfare, all the things that are going on. So he gets himself the deputy AG job. But in that transition, he converts himself over from Democrat to Republican to be on there. And he has, and this is, I've got pretty direct sourcing on this. He has basically stymied and held up anything to do with J6, Butler, investigations into the weaponization of government, and the Epstein files. He has been the impediment. Now, that could be on purpose. That could be by design. Maybe all campaign plans need their pacing, meaning, I'm sorry you want the Epstein stuff to go forward in April of 2025, but it's really scheduled for July of 2026. That's what the part that I don't understand. my observation of the things that we can observe is that Todd Blanche is a very, very bad player.
So
That would be my guess.
wasn't one of the lead J6 guys in terms of the more well-known, I wouldn't say lead as in led it, but one of the more prominent J6 guys, didn't he just have his sentence evacuated or not evacuated? What is it called? Set aside.
Vacated.
Vacated.
It was vacated.
Right?
Yeah. Top two guys did. The Proud Boys
Yep.
guy who was a Marine,
Yeah.
and then one of the others. Yep.
Yeah. So things are moving there. Congress colluded, and not just Democrats, but Republicans.
Well, across this party aisle, right? We need
Right.
to stop. We need to stop using that term Democrat, Republican,
yeah.
left or
Yeah,
right.
just
They're all
Congress.
one.
Just call
Well,
them
they're all
Congress.
owned by the same people.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So, order of operations, right? One must move carefully, and removing World War III was first order priority, right? First order operation. Second order operation is cut into illicit and legally illicit funding lines. Those two have pretty much happened. While you're doing all of that, you have to do immense amounts of loyalty tests. And we're still not through all of that. You never are, actually, right? You have to roll up as many of the foot soldiers, the capable foot soldiers you can, and ICE has been doing that. So I think a lot of things are happening. I think solid things are happening, but, General, to your point, it's about the pacing, and we don't know what that pacing is. And as we all know, in a battle plan, pacing doesn't get to stay what we want. Right? The war has its own pace at a certain point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
And branches and sequels.
Branches and sequels. Now, so I might put it slightly different. There are certain, the phasing, right? And there are certain things that need to happen in order for other things to be possible. And those things you can't change. We are coming up on the 2026 election, and it needs to be as clean an election is absolutely possible. And so because that is the single thing that is the most essential for the world right now. And so when I look at movements that are happening, I pay more attention, not to the movement, not to the pacing, not to any of that, but, how might this impact the 2026 election? The validity of an actual real valid election.
Well, they haven't done anything to fix the voter rolls, to fix the machines, to deal with the machines, to deal with any of the malfeasance with mail-in voting. Even the executive order doesn't have any teeth in it.
Right.
So until they do that, and look, people have to go to jail for what happened in 2020. I mean, that was an absolute coup. And the fact that nobody went to prison for it is, I'm going to go back to something I said 3 shows ago because it's still relevant. You have to bring the public along for the narrative. You have to bring the public along to tell them what the big fat plan is and bring them along so that they can buy into the narrative and be supportive of it. And none of that's happened. And I'm with General Holt. Todd Blanche is a problem. He is obstructing everything related to elections, and the election malfeasance has to be dealt with right now. That is time irrelevant until June. Then it's very
and
time
he
relevant.
he has an accomplice right now who is not even trying to hide it anymore, named John Thune, who on Friday all but said that the SAVE Act is dead on arrival, or you won't see it until this time next year. And it's not going to matter then.
No, because it'll be kinetic by then.
Okay, so you have one in the judiciary, one in the executive, or one in the Senate, one in the executive. So then, who in the judiciary on that side is the problem kid? Because you're starting to see captain. There you go. Exactly. and he
Yeah.
is totally compromised. And so what that means is we're identifying captains at the different branches of government.
So it's rather interesting to me as a signal that we put so much energy and effort, rightfully so, to recover our guys and our downed pilots and WSO. And then yesterday or the day before, the executive order on the use of psychedelics for post-traumatic stress, addiction, et cetera, which is really brain injuries, both of them.
Right.
Those are speaking directly to our actual warfighter community. And then the Proud Boy guy gets released, and one is getting the signal that our guys, when I say our guys, that Trump and network are preparing for a fight.
Yeah, I agree.
And, when I look at the way in which a fight would happen in the United States, I messaged Tom Luongo earlier, just because every once in a while I annoy him on purpose with a random thought, right? Give me 1 second. If and when things go sideways in the United States, which will most likely be around and involving the elections, I think, Steve, to what you were saying, the military won't be used to, it might be used for riot control and those types of things, but mostly what the military will be used for, the conventional military, will be to hardpoint infrastructure, key infrastructure. And it will be the special operations and elite law enforcement folks who are doing the actual kinetic stuff.
Yeah, they would have to. They would have to.
Right?
Well, legally, that's how that has to go.
So I'm watching the moves, so I don't pay attention too much to the theater. I do pay attention to it because I do, pay attention to the markets and all that, because that's where the big signal is for the big fight. But I'm also seeing things, and you would need Proud Boys, and you would need some of the other, the other militia-like peoples, et cetera. And so while whatever this gentleman's name is at DOJ is doing whatever he's doing, and Thune and Roberts, I don't even know necessarily they're the bad guys. That might be theater. And again, that might just be pacing, right? They're controlling the pacing. And because we're in information warfare, you sure as hell don't want to give the enemy any indication of what your real intentions or what your pace is, right? They know the steps. The enemy knows the steps we have to take. What the enemy has been able to do up until Trump got back into office is control the pace. So I think more is going on than we know, because I'm seeing the signaling to the elite, the elite kinetic guys. And again, that's not just special operations and intel. That's also the elite law enforcement and to, militias, et cetera.
I was going to ask, I've been meaning to ask you guys the last couple of shows, as I'm rereading my favorite book ever, Raven Rock, all about continuity of government. And, there's all the flowcharts of succession and blah, blah, blah. But one of the final things, I think that began under Reagan was, well, how did the Soviets know if they're talking to the acting commander in chief? And the best way they could conclude was, they will say, look at this part of the ocean, a nuclear sub will surface. Because it's that's pretty much okay, that guy's in charge, right?
Yeah.
And I've been meaning to bring that up. Is there a way we would see that if you know what to look for? Is there a way that Trump et al. Would be able to signal that they are in charge, or this is what they're doing? Has anything we've seen really, I guess in the last year or so, just for brevity, been something along the lines of that is showing who's in control? I keep forgetting to bring it up, but I've been meaning.
It's a great question, Tommy.
If any of you guys have an answer, I have no idea.
General, what's your thoughts? Because I need to pause a moment and actually think about it. That's a damn good question.
Well, because the issue is a lower ranked guy could say, hey, this destroyer is going to go there. Well, how many guys could say that move a destroyer? More than one. Versus like, hey, we're going to land a B-2 bomber at this air base and it's going to have its transponder on. It's like that. Okay, that's big dick.
That
Like
signal. Yeah.
that's what I've been wondering. Is there a way to do that to people that know what to look for, like you guys? Is there a way to do that? Yeah.
Those protocols do exist, and then there's the protocol that's not an official protocol at all. So when world leaders like a Putin or a Trump get together in Alaska, or you get the meeting coming up with Xi and President Trump coming up, and there's no electronics around, and to the extent that you can do that, then on a personal basis, the gentleman can work out signals
Gotcha.
for validation. But then what your real question is what kind of cue would we get? The only cues that would that I think we could glom onto is something highly unusual that makes absolutely no sense. So if the three of us or the four of us are sitting here and we're like, well, what the hell was that? Why would that?
Talking
Doesn't make
shit at the
any
Pope?
damn sense. Well, to your point, a dog Russian submarine would never surface on the coastline of the Potomac. It wouldn't.
Sure.
But if it did, that would be where the four of us would go, okay, something is going on.
To your question, Tommy, the thing that comes to mind is Joe Kent and others, but really Joe Kent, and then the reaction. Like, have you guys been paying attention to the interaction between him and Sarah Adams?
I have absolutely watching.
Right?
It's good.
For me,
it's
I'm like,
it's
chuckling.
encouraging.
I haven't been watching, so please enlighten me.
Yeah. Well, she's going after Joe.
Yeah.
And then yesterday there was the show with Matt Tardio and the others where they're straight up saying Joe Kent and whoever this other fellow is are lying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. Thanks for that, by the way. I was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, what she did was she just confirmed what we all knew, at least here, that she's still on payroll.
Oh, yeah.
I told you that a year ago.
Well, we've been saying it.
Yeah.
When
I
she
didn't have a
comes
question
out,
about this.
Yeah.
when she comes out on Sean Ryan. Now, there's going to be this massive attack, but it's not us.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
there's
that's
37
not us.
guys, and it's going to happen on a Tuesday at 3:17 and 18 seconds.
Yeah, so pay
But
attention.
it's not us.
Yeah, but it's not
Not
us.
us.
Yeah.
That
And they didn't use my credit card for the rental vehicle. Yeah.
that tanker in the Straits. Yeah, we didn't do that either.
Yeah. So
it's
Tommy,
not gone yet.
Tommy, to your question, okay. I do believe we are hearing two signals very clearly. One is the administration and thereby the American people are actually operating under duress. That was the Joe Kent signal. The Joe Kent signal was that Sarah Adams and her factions are a legitimate imminent threat. That's why we hit, Iran, cut out movements of monies and supplies, not supplies so much, but, illicit funding, et cetera, had nothing to do with Iran. That was how the city of London was being used to, fund certain operations, call out, they were going to use that as the excuse for doing the terrorist strikes on the United States and blame it on Iran. Have we noticed none of those have happened? Why? Because when we hit Iran, when the Sarah Adams faction, I'm just going to say that it's, she's just the face and not even a pretty face of the that faction.
That was necessary.
I mean, wish they give us a pretty face that isn't bad shit crazy eyes, right? When, so I believe very firmly we hit Venezuela. That activated the cartel boys, our elite law enforcement and special operations guys, because you can have Title 10 special operations guys operating under Title 32 authorities in the United States if they are working with certain law enforcement task forces.
It's got, yeah, it's a bit, yeah. I don't want to split hairs on that. You're right, but there's a very specific mission that has to be done.
Correct. But what is that mission? Primarily, it's
Yeah.
counterterrorism.
And I think
et cetera.
Venezuela was more about money than anything else. I
Well,
think
it was,
more
but
about
again,
money
And
laundering.
evidence. And evidence.
Yeah, and evidence. But again, what I'm trying to get at is, and terribly sorry on the long drawn out. It's Sunday morning and I'm sober. I haven't had drink in days. Give me a second. The Venezuela thing is two sides. One, you're absolutely right. On our side, what were we doing? There was another operation that was happening at the same time, though, and that was when the Sarah Adams faction was then going to activate their assets here in the United States under the auspices of Venezuela was striking back. We were prepared. And then we roll those guys up.
Well, remember, it's Roxanne's birthday, and she said on my roundtable, which blew everybody away, that this is a notorious date for major attacks.
Yeah, well.
So sleep with your rifle tonight, please.
Well, it's a little uncomfortable. I sleep with a pistol. It's a little more sexy. And yeah. Give me a second. Two of them, actually. Because one is none, right? Also, when we hit Iran, we were also prepared because we knew, because they told us, Sarah Adams herself and others told us that, and they set this up back with Butler, just after Butler, when they said Iran was behind the assassination attempt, which is funny because it all traces back to Ukraine, but, splitting hairs, right?
No, that's a salient point. I mean, I actually did the trace on that, and you're right. It does go back to Ukraine. Most of the actors are heavily involved in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So
same with the guy down at the golf course. Same with freaking Charlie Kirk. Yeah.
And by the way, that's what that was one of the indicators that told me that Sarah Adams, I mean, besides the crazy eyes, that was one of the indicators that told me she was still on the payroll, was the fact that all of those roads lead back to Ukraine. Yeah. And you can't forget about all of the illicit activities that we were doing in Ukraine, the bioresearch, the human trafficking. And this human trafficking thing is bigger than people think, right? And dismantling it, you're dismantling a system, not a group of individuals. And that's a way harder proposition, which is, and again, I go off the narratives, right? I'm watching the narratives because I'm watching the population get fed a bunch of nonsense. And you've all heard me say this on the show. I don't believe anything right now. I don't believe shit that I see, because 48 hours after it's pushed out, it turns out that it's complete nonsense. I mean, aside from the fact that it's ridiculous when it comes out in the first place and you hear it and you're like, what the fuck? What did you just say?
Yeah.
Get away from that for a second, right? Because, and I want to talk about Trump's Sunday post, right? On Easter Sunday, right? Because first of all, I was incensed, and I was incensed because my whole life has been, it's been reinforced throughout my whole career that you protect the office of the president. It's not the man; it's the office of the president that has to be protected, right? And most people don't know what the hell that means. That means when somebody like Bill Clinton, who's humping the neighbor's cat, and gets caught pumping the neighbor's cat, you protect the office, not the man. You could throw him under the bus, but you protect the office, right? And Trump repackaged everything that the regime had been saying in Iran for the better part of 30 years and fired it back over the wire on Easter Sunday. And it was a very targeted information attack, right? And I didn't agree with it. I still don't agree with it.
I think it activated a plan.
But
I think maybe those activated a plan. We were just talking about signals.
Steve, finish your thought.
I don't disagree with that, General. But my point of that is that signal, non-signal, whatever the case may be, there's a certain decorum the president has to maintain right now, right? Right. It's not for us. It's for the average people on the ground that have no idea what's going on, right? There's a certain level and again, this goes back to this, and I'm saying this from the perspective of messaging, not from the perspective of the man, the situation, but messaging. Okay. It's important right now.
Steve, I agree with you in the way that you're handling that by conventional means. You're absolutely correct. I have been very direct with Trump team members that this is crazy. Are you intentionally trying to shred your base and these types of things? However, now let me put I feel, I'm a general, so I'm going to say I feel strongly about that both ways, always. Um, on the other side of that, I think the
This
clear
message
and
brought to you by Raytheon. Is that what you're saying?
yes, RTX.
I caught the eye roll. I was laughing at the eye roll.
I am the least likely general to be considered for a board seat at that lovely organization.
Can you do the first ever product placement for the military industrial
Oh,
complex?
that
Be
would
like,
be
whatever
awesome.
happens in Iran, I
that's right.
hope we use the new and updated LASM Jurasim cruise
That's
missile
right.
with new stealth
And
technologies.
today's episode was brought to you by the discombobulator.
Well, there,
yeah. So
I'm terribly sorry.
So the point is I think the thing that Americans don't understand, and I don't even think that we have a very good understanding of it here, is the level of severity of a clear and present danger to the future of the United States right now. And so when President Trump puts out some bombastic, this is crazy town social media thing, and the only way that I read that was, holy shit, that's a plan activation. That is absolutely a plan activation. And 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 you could say, well, that just shredded the decorum of the office of the presidency. It's like, well, does President Trump then look at this as there may be no president later if we don't win here? And
that could be, General. But again, there's a point where when you pass a culmination point where you can't recover, because look, information is just as important as kinetic. And it can be even more important,
I
like
agree,
right
Steve,
now, right?
Steve, I completely agree with you, except for the fact that we're not sitting at the helm with the information.
Well,
and what I'm
it
saying is,
be. Would
but-
you
but
get somebody on the phone and tell them
Hold on.
that this lieutenant colonel will go unfuck that whole situation tomorrow?
Okay.
Just give me a
All right.
brigade of hoolas,
Hold
and
up,
I'll go
hold
take
up.
care of it.
Hold up. If the man is sitting there in a little pool of alligators, piranhas, and Ides of March knives, then he may be communicating in a way that you find wholly distasteful, but may be completely necessary and appropriate. Here's the thing. President Trump is a lot of things. He's a lot of things, but I'll tell you what he's not. He's not a dumbass. And the man knows TV, and he had the #1 rated TV show in popcorn TV forever. So nobody should say President Trump does not understand communications. He absolutely does.
I don't disagree with any of that,
drunk
General.
Tweeting.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. Okay, so let's go down the rabbit hole of it's a plan activation.
Come down, Lord. This is the rabbit hole you
But I think
wanted.
this is also more, again, gentlemen, the enemy is funding themselves through algorithmic trading and through financial, through risk mitigation strategies. And so we are in a period of time. Again, people need to study data brokerage. Steve, if you haven't read the book Chaos Monkeys, I highly recommend it. Right? We're living in a information control environment that's your world, but what you may or may not know is that is tied directly into the world's markets, and it's driving 90% of the trade transactions, which are automated. And what that requires for that risk system to work that does the risk-based pricing is civility. Chaos, but chaos that's masked in civility.
Is it Chaos Monkey or Chaos Monkeys?
I don't
Chaos
remember
Monkeys
actually.
with Garcia Martinez.
Is there more than one book?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty unique name.
Is it Monkey or Monkeys?
It's Monkeys.
Monkeys, okay.
Obscene Fortune and Random Failure.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book. It's quite literally what drives the modern world. And it's 90% of the trades on the markets, but it's also 90% of the news cycle. It's because it's all driven by this data brokerage system. And the only way in which to disrupt it is legitimate, constructive noise, not just purely destructive, right?
I don't disagree with that, but because I got off point when I was talking about that because, when Trump repackaged that and sent it back at the regime, that was, it was essentially, here's your language. I'm going to send it back to you in a way that I know it's going to resonate with you and it's going to land with everybody in your environment. And then he followed it up with Monday, like, we're going to destroy your civilization. Get away from how reprehensible that is, because that's reprehensible for any diplomat
I
to
thought
say.
it was glorious.
But the point is that he made the ultimatum. This is not, we're not just going after the oil. This is, we can take the water away from Tehran. We can stop the flow of goods into the country. We know where all your logistics trains are. We can stop your entire civilization.
The argument that I would make is that was not a message for the regime.
No,
that was a message for the financialists.
Yep.
And it was a message aimed at Lloyd's. We're coming for you.
Yep.
I can't make that leap, General, but I'll just go with it for now. I just can't make that leap. But my point of saying all that was the piece that's missing from this is that you got to bring the public along, because otherwise you get
public
to the
doesn't
culmination
matter.
point.
The public doesn't matter. The public is, at these times when we are at the utmost on the precipice, the public is the impediment.
I would disagree with that.
You need to reach 20% of the populace.
If the ballot box doesn't currently matter, the public doesn't matter. What the public needs to hear is buy food, buy ammo, buy gas.
Well,
that's what
the public needs to hear.
Let me go a step further than that, because I don't disagree. I don't agree with that, because I'll tell you why I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Let's go back to when Google was building the social scoring system for China, and they're a bunch of developers went off the reservation. The reason why those developers went off the reservation was that the messaging that was in the public space was, you guys realize what you're building. You're building a digital prison for China that's going to be rolled out here. And there's a whole army of people here that can do a whole lot of damage without firing one shot. And there's a whole lot of people here that know how to fuck with things, that can make things come to a grinding halt without having to fire a shot. And that's who you're talking to. You're not talking to the average, plumber or electrician. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about
dealing with that right now. What we're dealing with is we are dealing with being on the precipice of a civil war.
Yeah,
we were on the verge of a world war, which goes nuclear. Now we're still on the verge of a civil war. And when we're in those times, there are certain things, certain messaging, certain conversations, etc., that do not take priority or precedence. And one of the things that has to go away in those times so that people will actually stop and argue and listen is civility has to go away. Now, there are key places in time where civility is necessary, right? Even in the worst of times. But we are at a place, back to what Tommy asked, because Tommy's question was very, very solid question. I believe, Tommy, that we are getting two signals when we listen across all of these things. One, we are under duress. The administration, the American people are under duress. There is imminent threat. At the same time, the administration and the network around them, the broader network, and not just here in the United States, are still nevertheless working all out to address that duress, that imminent threat. And it could go either way at any minute.
And so the last thing I want to tack onto that was, in the book they go, and that's also what we've, since the Cold War ended, that's what we have used for other countries where there's a coup, which made me think about ARC. Are we seeing this from the other things? Are there any signals from then? Because the very topmost thing, as you said, get nuclear war off the table. You hope there's not civil war, but you would take that over thermonuclear holocaust. Do we see that from ARC? Do we see something?
Yeah, if we listen carefully to Putin, now Putin, Steve, to your point, and that's because of where they are in their cycle of cutting out, disentangling themselves from all of this. Putin is the one that, no matter what, remains civil. No matter what.
Absolutely.
But that's also his role right now and his role in place in this. Okay. If you look at Xi remains civil, but Xi doesn't actually say much that goes public.
He's too busy relieving generals and arresting people.
He's cutting the British. He's cutting the Brit. Well, what he's doing is he's cutting the British stay-behinds out of the Chinese sphere of influence, and he's doing it very successfully. But what he's also doing in that is he's removing chaos agents from the Chinese sphere of influence, not just in China. So Xi's engaged in the fight. We are not quite there yet. What Trump's doing with his noise is, one, disrupting markets, but he's also shaping the battlefield here. General, your thoughts? I know you only got a few more minutes here.
Yeah, I think that this is exactly right. My read right now is that we are in the penultimate phase, or if you want to call it, of this terrible, horrible novel, the denouement, of what is to come. And I think we're going into this final phase. I think there is a milestone marker out there called the midterms,
Yeah.
but I see no evidence whatsoever that we're on track for anything other than a continuation of the take out Trump at all costs, flip the script in the power base in DC. I understand there is no aisle, but then there's a missing piece to this chapter, and that's why I started this conversation with the intriguing social media posts this morning, where the president is implying that a season of accountability is actually just around the corner. Now, he would never tell his enemies straight up, "I'm coming for you," especially this bunch. So there's something in the air or the offing that is to come. But I do understand that in the president's plans, again, he's not a dumbass. In the president's plans, there is an event around the corner, and it could be foreign, domestic, or both. Financial, and you can't see it. I was told by a source that major financial movements happened over the weekend that we can't see. But that if that gap, that black hole that I've been talking about, is not filled, well, then we're going to be in a new place in this nation after November. And if it is filled, then we'll understand that bizarre and repulsive social media posts like the kind we saw were with great purpose. And maybe one day we'll learn more about what that looks like from a granular level.
Can we touch on the SAVE Act? And one of the reasons why maybe it's not getting pushed through is that it's actually a trap, because it would require voter, ID to vote. However, the states, blue states specifically, have been giving IDs, formal, literal, IDs to illegals for a decade plus. And the way in which they've been doing it is, and forgive me, I can't remember the mechanism exactly, but I know a former command sergeant major from 5th Group who was with certain agencies afterwards, and he was involved in it. He could lay it out. States have been doing this perfunctory look at federal rolls, and I can't remember which databases, and then coming back and using that as a validation of, citizenship. And then they're
DMVs.
issuing,
It's tied to DMVs.
and then the DMVs are issuing IDs or driver's licenses. So when those individuals go to the voting stations, they're going to have a valid ID. It doesn't mean that they're actually a citizen, and there are tens of millions of them.
And they've been doing it here. Yeah.
And
that's how they do it here. As soon as they roll in, they get an ID, then they also are registered to vote right there.
Correct.
They can literally do a mail-in ballot.
The question, one of the concerns might be that maybe the SAVE Act is a Trojan horse specifically to steal the election by giving this, and in a dramatic fashion, because of the illusion of, voter ID, tens of millions. This is no exaggeration. It's millions in California alone.
Well, it's proof of citizenship too, right? That was the big fat claim. I don't know. Now I don't know what's still in the language.
The DMV is supposed to look at the federal, what is the Immigration and Naturalization database.
But remember, they've also been giving these people Social Security numbers too.
Yeah,
so they look like U.S. citizens in the federal system. They've covered all the bases.
Correct. Yeah. So if they pass the SAVE Act required ID, it might do the biggest steal of an election yet, and lock that in because it was all done with voter ID.
Right.
Well, so they've 2020 was not about the presidential election. It was about the down ballots.
ballot.
And the
Debate
swing
on,
states,
gentlemen.
right?
Take care.
Yep. Take care, Blaine.
And it was about the down ballot, and it was about the swing states and converting the swing state. And I was told, again, this was almost 4 years ago now, I was told that there's a plan to convert all the swing states to blue states and to drive blue agendas across all those swing states and then solidify and codify all of the cheating and malfeasance into law so that they could never
It's legitimization of Tammany Hall.
yeah, so they could never be thrown out of power like they did in Washington. It's the exact same script they used when Christine Gregoire came into office in Washington State. It was malfeasance that brought her into office, and then they've slowly but surely codified all those things. And now it's their full-on communist consolidation of power going on up there. So some of this, I think, I'll just say it. I think we're past the culmination point where a civil war is not possible. I think that's going to happen at some point. What it looks like, if it's symmetric or asymmetric, doesn't really matter at this point. And I say that again, this goes back to messaging. And the reason why I keep harping on this is that messaging creates believers. Believers are the ardent supporters of whatever bullshit you drop in front of them. You can drop a steamy pile of shit in front of them and tell them that it is democratic and for our democracy, and they will buy into it. And if you go back to World War II, especially in the Nazi regime, you can see ardent believers that went along with whatever ludicrous thing was put in front of them. And that's where my concern is. It's not on the civility of the message. It's creating ardent believers. And trust me, you're in Idaho. Go spend some time in Washington State on the east, on the west side. Just Jesus Christ, it's like every other person
I lived
is
in Washington for years. And
blue-haired
My
and
family goes
retarded.
back there to the 1800s.
Dude, I get off the plane and I'm agitated from the time I get off the plane because I'm listening to these people. Like, case in point.
Wait a moment, Steve. If you ever go to anywhere that agitates you, it's going to work like freaking Adderall, put you over the top, and you're going to calm down.
No,
You're gonna reach Nirvana.
Because you're already
No.
peak
We gotta drop
Dude,
you. We're gonna drop you in New Delhi.
I've already been there. Yeah. If I want to smell like feet and ass, I'll go to New Delhi. Yeah.
So, give me 1 second. When a fight comes, it isn't the masses you're talking to. When a fight comes, it's the fighters.
I agree. Yeah. Thanks for
Right.
qualifying that. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for qualifying that.
So if we are that close and imminent, then civility isn't what's required right now. Because, and I hear it in the special operations community, the Green Beret community specifically. This same disquiet with the incivility, but those guys aren't fighters, or they're out of the. They're not willing to fight here at home. People are done, and I hear. I've got friends all over the world. They love the way Trump talks. They love it.
I know there's two sides of the fence there. That wasn't my point in the beginning. My point is that messaging is important right now.
Well, but there's all kinds of things that are happening if and when it goes to a fight. We need to not think for a moment that there wouldn't be a straight up face to face, a direct, obvious, no vitriol kind of statement of this is where we are. Right? But when it comes to an actual fight, we have to think less Eisenhower and more Patton. We have to think the last Civil War we had here in American soil. Who was the one that was finally brought in that was the lead general who won the war?
Sherman.
Grant.
It was Grant.
And he was a drunk.
Yeah.
And he would go off on people.
But he was also a master at the written word and could get
Correct.
very succinct orders and send them to very succinct people at very succinct times, which enabled him to pivot and move in a battlefield where there was a mountain of ambiguity.
Correct.
Right. And we also had
he
Abraham.
had enemies within, he had enemies without. Yeah. So when we pay attention across the board of what Trump's saying, he reminds me a little bit of Grant, just without the alcohol.
Yeah, I'm thinking Abraham Lincoln, right? So,
Well, but Lincoln was always more civil, but that I know of. I haven't dug deep into him, but I will say this. I really kind of wish we had text messaging during the Civil War because I would have loved Grant's drunken rants.
oh, that would have been epic.
Twitter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That would have
Twitter
been
in the
epic.
Civil War.
But you're right.
Twitter
We
in the
do
Civil
need
War.
Patton right now. That's what we do need, right? Somebody who can visualize the battlefield and make key moves at the right time, and is not worried about conservation of force, worried about
Well, I
slowing
think
enemy
that's
momentum and taking the initiative back, which was Patton's specialty. Like the guy could visualize the battlefield, and if you ever want to know what Patton really thought, go read a book called the Patton Letters. You're going to get a whole dose of information on the guy that you never even thought was possible. And he could visualize the battlefield, and he was not worried about, conservation of forces or disposition of force. He was worried about stealing the initiative from the enemy because he knew that the moment you do that, you have control of the battle space.
Yeah, you have to disrupt the enemy's pacing.
He was a master at it. Yeah. He was a master at it.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get any credit for it either, because part of his bravado, though, he had a very high-pitched voice, so he swore and cursed to compensate for that. And the other thing people don't realize about Patton is his wife was, insanely rich. So
Patton comes from one of the original American families. He comes from a very old family.
Very, very old family, right? Yeah. So he was already at a different tier in the military. And I can't remember who was in charge of the military that just despised him. It wasn't Ike, it was
Marshall?
Marshall despised him. And because
tried to fire him once.
Yeah, I didn't think he was a good general, but Ike knew he was. Yeah. So anyway, my point of saying all that is we definitely need that right now. Somebody who can visualize the battle.
Well, I think that's why they fired not the Secretary of the Army, but the Army chief.
Yeah.
I think that's why they fired the guy.
Could be a lot of reasons.
4-star, right? What was his name?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember it. But
General Who is kind of where I'm at with most of them.
Mm. Well, what did Marshall do right before World War II? He fired 80% of the senior officer corps.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were a lot were very left leaning too. And that's something that most people don't realize is that liberalism in the general officer ranks, it's not a new phenomenon. It goes all the way back to the
it's not just the GOs, but it's the O's, most of them at that time came out of Ivy League and the academies, right? We didn't have the ROTC program that was stood up Vietnam era, right?
Yeah, Vietnam.
To open up the officer corps because you couldn't get the Ivy League guys to go to Vietnam.
Why do you think they call it run off to Canada? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't even seen that.
Because they came around during Vietnam and people ran off to Canada.
I think we're in a, Tommy, you asked a very astute question, and I think people need to really keep that in mind, right? We have a saying in the military, we have a concept and a practice in the military. It's called duress codes, right? And duress signaling. And it, for me as an old grunt, it's right down to I'm on a patrol, I'm coming back through the wire, and there's a duress and counter duress signal that we say, right? So that they know that, yes, while I might have the password, that I'm not under duress.
Yeah, there's not, 50 guys. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Or they're holding one of our guys, so I can give a signal that lets the guy, give the right passcode, right? Pass and challenge. But then in a sentence or in a comment or whatever, there's a certain word that's a duress word, and then they know, okay, right?
Man, you wonder if right, the joke that all the Chinese radar didn't work in Venezuela, you wonder if that was Xi's lifting of the sub. I'm gonna go do this that no one else would do. I'm gonna go blow up these cartels' cocaine shit, and you're not gonna do anything. And did Putin comment on Venezuela at all?
Not really.
No. Yeah.
No, what Putin did say around the same time, though, is that we are not and won't be part of your Roman world. Well, Venezuela was a Roman outpost, Rome 2.0. So you're very right, Tommy, very astute.
Would you say that,
Xi's signal was also in Iran.
yeah, would would you say Putin like not going nuclear in Ukraine is his signal of, because the powers that be want World War III, and he has shown tremendous restraint.
Yeah, so what
Or is that a
Putin
little, is that more of a
understands.
stretch?
No, 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 no. It's what Putin understands is that Ukraine is a civil war.
Yeah.
Other forces externally are trying to make it a world war. But what Putin and the Russian command understands and the Russian elites understand is that Ukraine-Russian war is a civil war. And so what they're looking at is, let's not allow foreign powers to turn it into a world war. So we need to keep it at a certain level. But more importantly, on the other side of this civil war, we are going to have to repair the relationships amongst our own people. So we're not going to go beyond a certain threshold. Now, at the same time, of course, they're draining Europe. They're of weapons and munitions and the capacity, finances and everything else, so that they can't, rearm themselves, and then everybody in Europe joins in a fight against Russia, because that is very much also their interest. But primarily, and he says, and Putin has said it, others have said it. This is considered a civil war fostered by the outside and the Slavic peoples, because it's a Slavic civil war, and the Slavic peoples are looking at how do we get through this? Because there's nothing for it but to go through. But how do we then minimize the damage such that on the other side we can repair this, the damage in the Slavic world? And this is why civilizational peoples are so absolutely important, because they think in these ways. And that's why it's so critical for us, particularly if what Steve says, and I suspect it's right, that we are heading towards kinetics here in our own country. I think it's going to kick off in Ireland and the United Kingdom first, possibly. That's why it's so important we fall back on our civilization, because what we need to realize is that at that point, when it goes there, we are in a civil war that others are trying to turn into a world war. And the way, and one of the ways in which we keep it from going world war is that we recognize ourselves as a civilizational people, that we are stuck in this English 400-year civil war I keep writing about, and that while we need to prevail, we also need to think about rebuilding, healing and repairing on the other side.
Steve?
Well, I think it's going to take decades no matter what we do, right? Reconstitution, rebuilding is going to take decades, and people don't realize.
It'll take 80 years. It'll take an entire saculum, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. People don't realize how much damage has been done, not just to the country and the Constitution, but to the culture, and it's the cultural issues that are
to our civilization. Yeah, we need to not completely rebuild, because we get to fall back on 1,100, 1,200 years of civilization, but the last 400-year great cycle and this last 80-year saculum has nearly destroyed us.
Yeah.
Unlike anything before. Even when the Normans showed up in 1066, my people, even when the Normans showed up, they didn't do this kind of destruction. In fact, what the Normans did, yes, they went after Saxons and then went after others that, resisted, etc. But they became more English than the English. They codified English society and civilization in way more powerful ways that helped it survive to this day. But this last, 80 years, we were occupied in 1688, started in 1642 when the conflict was fostered, the first English Civil War fostered by the outside. Now we're at the next major English civilization civil war. And this has all been set up by this last 80 years that we've been at nonstop war all over the world. And we've been completely infiltrated with those who are seeking in every form or fashion, our own people and others, to destroy English civilization and the English way of life. And that, of course, again, includes the Irish and the Welsh and the Scots and the South Africans and the Rhodesians and, to be quite frank, the Jamaicans, the Kenyans, and others. Now, Kenya has its own independence, et cetera, but down underneath, a lot of these people are English civilizational people when you talk to them.
One thing that I think we didn't talk about that is very salient to current events is the fact that, um, back in July of 2025, Michael Yon posted a Substack that talked about how they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz and they're going to close the Malacca Straits. And his contention is exactly what I'm seeing is that outside of the U.S., they're architecting a famine across the planet.
Oh yeah,
And this is going to be a long-term famine. This is not a short-term deal. And you can't deny that that's
Well,
the agenda right now.
it's the agenda, but it's going to fail. And here's why it's going to fail. And I don't agree with much of what Michael says. Give me 1 second. And not to cast dispersions on Michael Yon, right? But I just don't agree with much of what he says. Unlike at any other time in history, in the last 500 years, there is a strong, independent Russia and Russian civilization, and strong but increasingly independent Chinese civilization and civilizational peoples. That is a vast stretch of the world and a vast amount of natural resources, productive capacity, and agricultural capabilities. Part of the reason why they're trying to take Ukraine off the table, because that's the richest agricultural land in the world, right? So I don't believe for a moment that Russia or China are going to let the rest of the world starve. And I also believe that, when we look at what we're doing in Hormuz is taking off the table their ability to shut it down. We're taking off the ability to shut down the Gulf of America out of Venezuela, Cuba, et cetera. Right.
I think Cuba is going to be next, by the way. And
yeah,
remember, China's a net importer, so they've got their own problems. But that's
what it does, that's a kind of dependency that is a positive dependency, because one of the things the Chinese are willing to do when they need to is they'll pay fair market price for things. And they won't try to steal it. Now, they're going to try and get the best price they can as long as we, keep the world destabilized. But back to Cuba. When we look at Venezuela and Cuba, what do we really need to look at is the map. If you were going to be a chaos agent and destabilize, oil flows in and out of the United States to other parts of the world, and petroleum-based exports such as fertilizers and other things, active pharmaceutical ingredients, et cetera, you would cause chaos in the mouth of the Gulf of America. And that would require Venezuela and Cuba. Venezuela is now off the table. Geographically, we have to address Cuba, right? And then the Gulf of America is open for business. Because we don't think about it this way, but we have our own Straits of Hormuz, our Straits of Malacca, and it's the open, the mouth of the Gulf of America. Right. The next one then is the Suez and
the Suez and Strait of Malacca are going to be the next. Those are
the Straits of Malacca, I think we just addressed in two ways. One is we just did a mutual defense, I think, or we just did an agreement with Indonesia. Now, that one concerns me a little bit just because of how powerful the Bushes were there with Suharto and his people. Give me a second. And Sotero, who was Barry Sotero's, that's Obama's real name, right? Who was Barry Sotero's stepfather. He was the head of oil and gas for Indonesia. He was a Bush person, Bush guy. He was Suharto's guy, but he worked for the Bushes, really, right? Give me 1 second. I think Indonesia is being addressed, or the Straits of Malacca, one on our side with an agreement and relationship with Indonesia, and then China's operations and activities in the South China Sea. Right? Now, the one wild card there is Singapore. But Singapore doesn't have much martial capacities or chaos capacities, but they have financial capacities that they use to back the
huge
pirates.
Financial. Because remember, there's a lot of shipping that goes through there. Yeah, and there's a lot of shipping.
And they have big shipyards. And what Singapore has been doing is Singapore has been washing the money for the pirates in the Straits of Malacca. So if that can go away, right? But that's a movement against Britain. So, with respect to the famine, yes, of course. I just this morning was commenting on, their force injecting people's cattle in France with diseases that then they're going to cull the herds. They're doing it right out in the open now,
Yeah.
right?
Going after bees too.
And bees. So
Throughout the Commonwealth. That's the
yeah,
piece. It's not
and
just
worldwide.
yeah.
So I mean, yes, they are trying to manufacture famine because that is exactly the playbook. But we have a very strong Russia and China now, and between the two of them, and there's some interesting things happening in Egypt on opening up and expanding their agricultural lands and creating a second Nile-like valley, agricultural productive lands. And we got to remember, Egypt was the breadbasket for the Roman Empire, all of it.
It was.
Right?
Yep.
So point being is that if
People don't realize how important the Nile River is.
Oh, it's extraordinary. Even today.
Yeah.
Even today, it's extraordinarily important. So there's amazing things happening. There is absolute awareness and knowledge, both in all of ARC and other parts of the world, that is exactly what they're trying to do, because they've been telling us that they want to reduce the population down to, some say 600 million, some say 2.5 billion. Well, the only way they can do that, because the mRNA vaccines didn't give them the kill counts that they wanted. So the only other way to do it is starvation. So I don't think Russia and China and the United States, once we get free, and we're probably going to have to go take Canada, which is fine, right? That's fun. I don't think that the famine's going to happen. Now, I think we'll have little pockets of it, and we'll have little problems with it, and we're going to have to address, and it's going to flow and ebb and all of that. But I think we're going to address it. I think that's actually a big reason for why we're doing what we're doing in Hormuz.
I would hope so, because, at the end of the day, I would hope so.
The real concern I have, to your point, Steve, the real concern I have is how they are using bureaucracies to go out and kill entire herds, because they've done it here in the United States. They're doing it
they
in
want to
France
control
right
the protein
now.
supply. Again, you and I have had this, we've had this argument, because it's not a conversation anymore. It's an argument about why Bill Gates is still walking around and he's still destroying the food supply. I mean, if you look at this guy's history, this is what pisses me off about this guy. And I'm going to rant for a second, because, I've listened to you suck the oxygen out of the room for the last hour. So it's all about me now. I've watched Bill Gates. First, he was in education, completely destroyed education. Then he went into healthcare, and he completely destroyed healthcare in a variety of ways. Not just, everybody thinks it's just the vaccines. He destroyed healthcare in a variety of ways. Now he's in the food supply, and he's a number one owner of farmland across the U.S. And major farms they're basically just production facilities. That's all they are. They're nothing more. They're not farms anymore. And why this guy is still walking around, it just shits me, because he should have been taken off the board months ago. And I know what you're going to say. Yeah, I'm going to say it's going to create a vacuum in power. I don't care. I want this guy gone. Right? He represents everything wrong with the world, and I think he's an alien anyway. And if you watch the movie in the 80s called They Live, and you remember that movie? He's walking around with the sunglasses, and he puts the sunglasses on, and he sees a bunch of signs that are like live, procreate, spend. And that's how I see Bill Gates. He's one of those aliens.
You have your own target deck. I have my target deck, and I will not disrespect your target deck.
Oh, please do. I mean, that's what we're all about, is crushing each other's hopes and dreams. I mean, come on, we're in the military here. Come on.
No. You have your order of operations. I have mine.
But I agree with one thing, though, that you said early on that we should circle back to. All roads lead back to the financial system.
Yes.
Every operation, every conversation, all roads lead back to the financial system. And, Catherine Austin Fitts, I think she's done a good job addressing the overall back end system, where everything is injected back into the system to solve some problem that they can't manipulate. Yeah. And I think that's a good, people need to, if you're in the audience listening to this, get away from my bitterness and general disdain for all things the elite right now. The financial system is what all of these mechanisms and systems are in place to support. because if the actual financial system was left to its own devices, the UK, Europe, and a lot of other countries would have been underwater decades ago. And so they've used all this illicit funding, and all of these systems have to be dismantled in order for us to move forward in a meaningful way. And that's the ugly part of this, because a lot of this is unseen to the public. But if you look at Venezuela, just from a landmass, you can do a lot of illicit activities in the jungles there, and people would never know you were doing it. And it's been going on for generations. So all of these systems have to be dismantled. And I would hope, for our sake, they are being dismantled. I don't see the empirical evidence of that, but I do see the empirical evidence of something happening in the background. I don't know what that is yet. And the proof for me was 2 days ago when it was all hands on deck to go after Joe Kent. And Joe Kent's the real thing. Like, why would you go after somebody with impeccable integrity and impeccable moral compass unless he's over target? So that was the tell for me.
So to your point, Steve, you're fundamentally in agreement. Read my book, Financialist Kill Chain, right? Goes into all this infrastructure over the last 400 years, going all the way back before that to the 700s with Venice, and even before that to Rome. The real reason, and then understand the real reason they want famine and to kill people off, is that they need the land to re-collateralize their system. And they're all in on liquidating. They've already imported hundreds of millions of slaves to work the lands, and they need us dead and gone so that they can confiscate the lands. And or they're using government to do it. Like, look at, the people are not paying attention to what happened to the Danes after their farmers stopped protesting. A whole lot of them have lost their farms through bureaucratic mechanisms, through punitive mechanisms. It's happened in Germany. It's happening in France.
But that's why I talk about the believers, because the believers are the most dangerous in this whole equation.
Yeah, well, they believe in liberal democracy. They think that's actually a real thing. Funny, haha, the joke there.
No, that's because liberals are stupid. All of them, without exception. They're stupid.
Yeah, but this isn't, because conservatives believe in liberal democracy too. The problem is,
let me hang on to my double standards, all right? I want my hypocrisy, all right? Come on.
You want your hypocrisy?
Steve gets one. You're allowed one.
Steve gets one.
You get one as a treat.
Many.
You get one as a treat, all right?
All right. He doesn't need treats. He's not a little dog.
Listen, if guys with dicks are gonna identify as women, Steve is allowed to have a much smaller contradiction. He's allowed to look at that.
Well, he doesn't really have contradiction. We're looking at two different, relativistically looking in two different ways. Everything Steve's saying is right. It's just we're looking relativistically from two different places.
That's the whole point isn't that the point of the conversation, is to look at it from multiple angles instead of just, just saying.
To come back to the signaling, one thing we've talked about before, right, is, the first thing you take off the table is nuclear weapons. And then the next is food. And then after, I don't know, it would be fuel.
Well, it's not food. The next one you take off the table is illicit funding.
Illicit funding. Okay. And then food. Yeah. So couldn't you say then, so nuclear weapons are hopefully off the table. Let's just go with the premise that it is.
I think they are. And I say that for a couple of very, very succinct reasons. For Trump to say, and so you got to give Trump credit for the fact that he said, we're not putting boots on the ground, and we're not, we are trying to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons. He said it in multiple ways. Yeah. And even Putin has said it, right? Nuclear weapons does not benefit humanity under any circumstances, right? So all the major power players agree that nukes, while they're there, there's not really a place for them in the current battlefield, right? The Orishnik, go back to the Orishnik. The Orishnik missile changed the battle space, and forever. People don't realize just how much of a shift that is, because you don't need.
You have a nuke without radiation.
Yes, you have a nuke without radiation that can penetrate the ground, that doesn't do as much damage. There's no collateral damage, and there's no radiation. That is a game changer, and people don't realize just how much of a game changer that is. Yeah. And the fact that they took out a bunker with that and killed everybody inside of it, including
they did not just a bunker, they took out an entire 5-acre complex with one
missile. Yeah.
One
That's
missile,
significant. Yeah.
and it wasn't a single strike. 36
Yeah.
little heads come out, right? So 6 heads, and then they split up from there if they need to. And one Orezhnik with no nuclear blast, no, actually, not even explosives,
Yeah. Just kinetic energy.
just kinetic
is-
energy
yeah.
took out 5 acres of complexes complex that had been hard pointed by the Soviets against nukes.
Yeah. And if you understand our doctrine for nuclear weapons, number one, we were always it was always retaliatory. We were never a first strike. It was our doctrine not to be first strike, and that changed under Biden.
Same with the Russians too.
Yep.
Yeah. Same with
Number
the Russians.
2, and this is most important for people to understand. Our nuclear arsenal, especially our ICBMs and our sub-launch, not necessarily the air launch stuff, but the sub-launch and ICBMs, their job is to go hit hardened targets, right? So you have multiple warheads because of 1, inaccuracy, and 2, the depth of which whatever that hardened target was, you had to basically dig it out with rudimentary weapons. So
Blast
basically,
it out.
you're basically just taking out a grid square to take out one target, and you're hitting them multiple times. Because people think that 4 or 5 warheads on a bus, it just flips and then it goes to a different part of the country. That's not how that shit works. It drops in a very small azimuth. Usually, if you're going after a hard target, you send 3 or 4 warheads, and they're timed to hit at certain times, so you don't fratricide your own bombs.
Yeah, well, not
Orezhnik does away with all that shit, all of it. Puts it right on target. There's little collateral damage. The kinetic
it's all
energy
at the same time. There's no delay, no need to double hit, double tap. Yeah.
The kinetic energy just feeds off of itself, and it turns itself into a self-licking ice cream cone of death and destruction.
And if they need a little bit extra oomph, they don't need to put nuke on there. They just put HE in there.
I rest my case. And it's changed the battle space. So I think everybody has recognized that. And then when you add to it that it's hypersonic, it makes it undefeatable.
Yeah.
And that's why the nuke business is obsolete at this point. Because
I don't think it's actually obsolete. I think we're always going to have nukes. That's always the final deterrent, because then that's mass CAS, right? That's a mass CAS capability. I think we're going to keep it as but I do believe that the Orezhnik has rewired the world substantively. Yeah. And I don't believe that, this general, he's not the only one, others were relieved. I think it's because they don't understand how substantively the actual battlefield has changed. Right, not just the tactical level, but
When it comes to China, I don't know, but the U.S., I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of general officers that are still fighting the
well, that's what I meant. What I meant is the U.S., right? Yeah. So China understands, right? Give me 1 second, and they probably helped in the development, to be quite frank. Give me a second. I do, Steve, believe that we are rushing towards kinetic, and I do believe very fundamentally, and I've written numerous pieces on this, including one yesterday, I do believe that we are inevitably walking towards, we're not running yet, but we are walking towards a English-speaking wide civil war.
I agree.
The entire former empire is all, and then where is it going to break out first? Is it Ireland? Is it the United Kingdom? Or is it here?
I'm surprised Ireland hasn't popped off already, or France. I'm surprised, just shocked, actually.
France is not English speaking. So that's an interesting thing. You bring up France. Well, another thing that people need to realize is that for several hundred years, the English speaking civilization owned half of France.
I'm just saying it from the perspective that they have a new Napoleon.
Well, they don't have a new Napoleon, but the point I'm getting at is that we are, of the European peoples, we warred with France for, 700, 800 years straight. There was one period of time where we were at war for 100 years unbroken with France. It's called the 100 Years' War.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, of the continental Europeans, we're the French and our histories are most closely intertwined. Right? But we are very distinct peoples, and we're not allies. We're not friends, but not necessarily enemies. So I don't think France is on the verge. The reason that France is not on the verge, to be quite frank, is that France, unlike the Commonwealth, is on its fifth republic. The Commonwealth is still a constitutional monarchy. And these don't seem like, this isn't about the power of the king. It's about the nature of the polity, the nature of the self-rule system. And the French, unfortunately, well, let me put it a different way. The English-speaking peoples have gone through two civil wars. One was in the 1640s and the 1650s, and the other started in 1776 and ended in the 1780s. Right? That was the American Revolution. So the English-speaking peoples have been now we've had other conflicts, Magna Carta and other, other things, but all out civil wars, we've only had two in our more than 1,000 years. The French have had 5 so far in just the last 200 years. They're not so interested, so the memories of that subconsciously and consciously goes very deep. And the French peoples are very understanding and forgiving because they don't, to get to the Sixth Republic or back to a Bourbon, monarchy, which is what I suspect's coming, they don't want to go into that because the blood memory is pretty deep. Our blood memory is not so much because the last major civil war we had was in the 1700s. And then here in America, we had the follow-on Civil War 2.0, English Civil War 2.0, which was the American Civil War. And that memory still goes deep, but not, outside the South. Most people don't know it. Out here in the West, we don't know it. It didn't reach out here.
I have to go in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But I wanted to point out the Oreshnik. I had Ted Postal. He's an ICBM.
Yeah.
The trying so the nukes, if then finance, and then the finance mechanism, and then famine. If we're saying that what ARC would theoretically do is try to take the successively worst threats off the table.
Yeah.
Could you say that any major move to sidestep the momentum of them wanting a famine, would that not also be kind of a signal of the existence of ARC? Would that not that's the submarine raising going like the 3 big powers are like, nope. So we took off the nukes, financialists, and then it's like end the food. So you're getting small. And,
very good, Tommy.
Ideally, you do it with a perfect 100% score. You're not going to get that. Ideally, you go farther down to where Civil War probable. But even if you can get rid of that, it's like, well, then there's like maybe you get smaller. But it's never going to go without a hitch. Okay. Somebody always fucks up the surgery a little.
Well, the enemy always gets a vote, right?
Yeah, the enemy. Yeah, and they're voting.
Yeah.
It's not that they get a vote. The enemy is voting.
But wouldn't you look at that and say, like, if China and Russia make moves to circumvent what seems to be is an artificial famine in the making, that would be evidence of the existence of the fucking
very
triangle
good, Tommy. Very good. Look at the restrictions on exports out of Russia and China on certain key things
like what?
that are necessary for agriculture and for logistics. Okay. The other thing, now look at what the enemy's doing. Some of the largest phosphorus deposits in the world are in Sudan and Ethiopia. What's happening in Sudan? We're flooding somebody's flooding Somalis into the Sudan conflict. So let's look to see what happens there and how we address that. I suspect very much, just a suspicion. Nobody's been saying this. It's just what I would do, right? And who the hell am I? But it's what I would do. Is once Hormuz is calmed down, I'd go smash Somalia. And that might be why all this fraud and stuff was all brought out in the open and why Ilhan Omar's being shown out for who and what she really is. I think we're going to go smash Somalia next. Why? Specifically so they stay out of Sudan so that those phosphorus deposits can be mined, because that's absolutely essential for agriculture.
And it's all about resources.
And it's
always all about resources.
And that right there, the Red Sea is another choke point.
And while we're talking about Somalia, again, this is something that people need to burn into their memory. These the Somali fraud that happened here, they didn't just show up here and figure out the system and then start grifting in the system. They were somebody at the very, very tippy top was helping them get organized or organizing and recruiting them to conduct operations. They were the operators. They were not the money behiing this.
And that money's flowing back to Somalia and being used now to go fight in Sudan.
Yeah. So, and the other thing that bears mentioning here is that all of this grift, all of this fraud, there's somebody at the very top that's in the system that is running cover, because you can't run an operation in multiple states doing the same thing without controlling the people in the state government, the people in law enforcement, and the people in the judiciary to turn their heads the other way and keep that going for as long as it went. That's at the very top. And you notice how we don't talk about who was running the op. Like, we don't talk about who was running the Epstein op and what he was doing and who he's working for. It's widely believed that he was working for Mossad, but there's a lot of other players that were involved in that for him to be able to conduct operations. Like,
he was working for the banks.
He wasn't.
Boss was the banks.
Yeah, he wasn't working
with the intel guys, but his boss was the banks.
Yeah, and a bulk of his activities were money laundering and shuffling money around to different things to do different activities, right?
That was his expertise,
And the piece that people don't realize is that it takes an incredible amount of logistics and a lot of people that are under very, very tight control to be able to run that operation for as long as it went. Meaning you have intelligence agencies, government agencies, law enforcement agencies, and the judiciary all know what's going on and are all turning a blind eye. So that's the Somali stuff is exactly the same. Exactly. Same with the healthcare, same with the rail system in California. It's the same game. So you can't unravel that system by arresting a few people. You got to roll everybody up at the same time, and it's got to be very, very well coordinated. Otherwise, these guys go to the wind and they just start over. So I was going somewhere with that and completely.
Well, I think you got there. I think you said it absolutely. Tommy, I know you got to run, but one thing real quick. You were thinking correct. You were seeing straight. So pretty much World War III is off the table. Pretty much the illicit, the ongoing revenue streams for, the Praetorians are being cut off and choked off, and that's what backs civil wars and World War III, et cetera. And the third piece that is absolutely essential is the staving off of the constructed famine, because that's another form of world war. And if we look, all three of those are being addressed.
Yeah, it makes me think the thing that came to my mind was, way in the past of astronomy was you could predict the size and mass of a planet. Even if you couldn't see it, that you'd see slight. If you knew what you're doing, like a Kepler, you'd be like, well, Mars is moving in a way that you can measure it all out to the point where you can go, well, it doesn't, sometimes it's gas, sometimes it's a rock, but you can know for a fact the mass of a planet and where it is simply by slight movements of things. And so that's what I kind of feel like this is.
Called Markovian, right? It's called Markovian blank gates, Markov. So just look at Markov, right? Markov chains, There's a Russian mathematician, brilliant 1900s, who worked all this out. And it's how do you identify what a thing is when you can't see that thing at all? Yeah. But you can see the movement in something you do, and you understand the dependencies, and you're like, okay, so there's Markov. Yeah.
And that's what it kind of seems like. So
awesome.
Gentlemen, as always, thank you for the time out of your day. Happy birthday to Colonel Watkins. I will send this to her. And
Steve, enjoy the rest of your bitter day.
I will, and I will take my bitterness and apathy with me in every place that I go. And I will covet them like my pet issue. This is my pet issue.
All right, guys. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Guys, thank you for watching.